If you can stay for this video, let's talk about music culture and what I'm trying to do and whether it makes sense for who I am. My name is Joe Ryder. This is Repeater Signal, which is a music project that focuses on storytelling in music. And it's part of Repeater Signal Media, which is a larger endeavor I have in terms of having a story online and focusing on media in a way that perpetuates positive messages. I've been thinking a lot about my role in music. I am 45 years old. I'm a white guy. Obviously, you can tell by the lighting and my complexion that I probably listen to typical white guy stuff, and I am end of Gen X, so probably a lot of 90s, right? A lot of, butt rock and things that people think of in terms of the stereotypes of the typical white guy that has been, listening to music his entire life. But you would be surprised at the wide range of music I listen to, everything from 90s rock, of course. That's what I grew up in. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, and so I grew up in Seattle music culture that kind of made its way down to Portland, which is where I grew up, the Portland metro area, and I know that stuff, and I've been in it, and I love it. But I like, I started out actually before all of that with hip hop and oldies and country and theater and opera, and I listened to classical music because my grandmother was really into classical music. I learned music in high school. I've been exploring music for decades. I started my music writing with electronica and trip hop and the stuff that happened at the end of the 90s and into the early 2000s. I studied blues in high school as a special project, part of what the Vancouver School of Arts and Academics had at the time, which was in the American grain. It had to do with American culture and that kind of thing. And my biggest interest at the time was music and videography. And I focused on music, and I focused specifically on Charlie Parker, Robert Jordan, several other very notable but sometimes misunderstood Black artists of the time. And this was back in the 90s when we didn't have as much research online. I was reading in books, I was reading through encyclopedias and that kind of thing, and a lot of that probably didn't have the full story as it does today. I listened to all kinds of flamenco and Latino ska and all kinds of other areas of music. I am a huge consumer of music, and I believe that almost every type of music has a story that can be told and should be told. Everything from R&B to flamenco, Cuban music, and blues Mexicano, and everything else that kind of has a story behind it. I absolutely love, and I will listen to the heck out of it. If you read you saw my Spotify, it is so eclectic and really doesn't have a lot of things other than the fact that I listen to a lot of guitarists, and I'm big in guitar, which is what I play. I started with bass and I expanded into guitar. But as I'm trying to write, as I'm trying to be a musician, I have to consider the fact that I have a specific face that is stereotypical in music as being an appropriator of other cultures' music. And that's not what I want to do. I want to perpetuate positive, experiences with different cultures. I recently listened to the Tiny Desk for Living Color that did, and the first thing they played was Cult of Personality, which I think was an iconic black rock song of the 80s and 90s. I believe that it was hugely influential on black musicians to be in that space and know that they can do something extremely positive. I believe, and I don't know that I read it yet, but I believe that the lead singer of Seven Dust he benefited from TV on the radio and Living Color and all these other black artists that were in rock and roll and made a great name for themselves. They weren't like top of the charts every year. They didn't have the 21 Pilots-esque kind of careers, but they needed to be referenced in the history of music. Bad Brains, very good example, extremely influential on punk rock, especially the origins of punk rock. And I just feel like that there should be more regard for those musicians, and that if I was to emulate any of that, so for instance, if I was to do a cover of one of my favorite songs of a living cover, which is Cult of Personality, which I did learn on the acoustic guitar. I thought there was a really good opportunity for an acoustic version and to perpetuate that message that was in the song. But I don't want to appropriate it. I don't, as a white musician playing a song written by black musicians, I want to make sure that people are going back to the original song, back to the original artist, and engaging that original artist. I think it's extremely important. But it's tough for me as a white musician, especially somebody who is very stereotypical white middle age, end of Gen X. So there's lots of stereotypes there. I just don't want to get into that stereotype. I just want to be able to write music, to produce music, and to put it out there and have people enjoy it, but with a message and with some of the history behind it. So my challenge with all of this is to really, in the marketing around it, yes, I'm going to try to write songs that are in the blues, in rock, and in some hip hop and beats and stuff like that. And some of that's going to travel over into black culture and Latino culture and Japanese culture and all these other cultures, right? Because they've developed their own voice in this music. But at the same time, I have to be respectful of those cultures and say it in the marketing, because you can't really say it in the music, right? The music is going to sound the way it's going to sound. Its message is not going to be able to say, by the way, this was done originally by a black culture, or it's a black related message, or whatever that is. I can't necessarily say that in the song directly, but what I can do is do that in the marketing. I can make sure that the original artists are cited if there's collaboration, or if there's a cover or whatever that is. I can make sure that anything that's talked about in terms of the music, anything I put out there on social media or I discuss in discussions, I'm talking about the culture and why it's so influential and why people should actually go back to those original artists and enjoy the genre. I think that's as much as I can do in this industry to dispel this whole idea that cultural appropriation means that people have to stay in their lanes. I don't believe that's the case. And I believe that if you look at the history of music, sharing different cultures' music and being able to see different faces within different genres has been extremely important. From Haitian, Cuban crossovers to South African music, to all these other situations. Yes, there's been context behind it that has been troubling and very contentious, but the music really is the universal language within those situations, and we really need to respect that. So I love your guys' thoughts on this. I know this is a long video. Appreciate you guys staying and listening to me ramble. It's ADHD, time for Joe, and I needed to get something off my chest. But thanks for listening. Let me know how else can I make sure that when I write something that is probably in the style of something else that probably wasn't, the Northern European background, how else can I respect that as a musician? You let me know. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys.